One of the foundational skills for any great painter is the act of choosing the right color. But when you're faced with so many options, it's hard to know where to start. So today, we're going to keep it simple by building this entire color wheel using only 3 primary paints. And we'll learn some basic color palettes to get you started in the right direction. So open up your paints and let's get started. Mixing paint can be daunting, especially if you already have a lot of pre-mixed colors. But I find that it's actually easier to find beautiful color combinations if you mix your own using only a few paints. I'll be using gouache today because it is the easiest paint for me to use and it will provide some very bright colors. But these lessons are foundational for any painter regardless of what medium you use. We'll start out with our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. For a primary red, I recommend cadmium. I unfortunately don't have any of those in my gouache, so I'll try Crimson Red Lake. As you'll see when we get to mixing, I really should have gone with the scarlet color instead, as this one does turn out to be quite a darker hue. For a primary yellow, cadmium is my recommendation, but I'll use this yellow mid. And for blue, ultramarine is usually the best primary blue, and I actually have this one in gouache. For an extra hint as I get my sketchbook ready, hue is the vocabulary used to describe a particular color, whereas value is the word used to describe how light or dark that color is. Today, I won't be discussing value mixing, but feel free to just add a bit of titanium white to lighten the value of any of these hues. Now that we have our primary colors on the page, it's time to start mixing. We'll move on to our secondary colors, orange, green, and violet, all of which are created by mixing just 2 colors. So let's start with orange. It's a combination of red and yellow. As you mix your paints, you might notice you need more of one color or the other to make the right combination. Take your time and don't be discouraged. Over time and practice, you will know more instinctively how much of each color to use to get the color that you want. Now that is a beautiful orange. Let's move on to green, one of my favorite colors to mix. There are just so many beautiful shades of green that are really fun to play with, and I love how these turn out. As we mix, you may be wondering why all the colors are in a circle. Partially, the wheel is shown as a continuous color range that never really stops, with all the hues slowly changing around the circle. But also, using this color wheel as a tool in the circular form makes it easy to choose colors that will go well together. And I'll go through some of those great options as well, so you can easily choose colors from the color wheel. There is our vibrant green, so now we'll do the same with violet. Violet is a bit of a challenge, and again, I blame my very dark red for this more brown-like violet, but always keep experimenting because you never know how all of your colors will react with one another. Just know that if you mix too many colors together, you'll usually end up with a dark brown. Now we have the start of a really lovely color wheel, but we can go even further, so let's create our tertiary colors. We'll fill in the gaps by mixing the colors that are next to each other, creating red-orange, yellow-green, and so on. Adding just a bit of extra primary color to our secondary colors should do the trick. A little goes a long way in creating an entirely different hue. Another tip when you're mixing your own paints is to use one brush for mixing and another clean brush for actually putting that paint on your page. Sometimes the brush you use to mix with will have too much of one color kind of stuck to it, so either clean it off really well or just use a completely different brush. Some of you might be wondering why mix your own colors at all when you can buy so many pre-made colors. And the answer is that it builds your knowledge and confidence, and it helps you to be a more versatile artist. You're able to create any color you need without being reliant on buying a new paint. So you'll be able to experiment with even more hues. Also, I find that using only the tubed pre-made paint doesn't create a very cohesive look on the entire page. For me, I really like all of the colors to blend naturally together, and that's why it's easier to just mix my own. But for whichever reason you're here, I'm glad you're learning with me and experimenting. Even if you don't end up mixing a lot of paint in your normal daily practice, I'm glad you're trying it out. It's a foundational skill to have. So now we have a beautiful color wheel. We also have a palette full of paint. So let's start using some of these colors. But how do you know which colors to use? Well, there are a few helpful color combinations that may help you if you're not sure where to start. So let's go over 3 different color schemes that provide really strong results. And all you need is your color wheel. You'll have to let me know which one is your favorite. First, we'll start off with complementary. I'm sure many of you have heard of complementary colors before. Any 2 colors can be complementary if they are directly across from each other on the color wheel. Today, I'm going to use my primary blue with my secondary orange. Complementary colors often create a very vivid pop of color. The colors are very high contrast, which makes them seem even brighter than they are. Next up, we'll try analogous colors. Today, I'll do an orange-yellow, yellow, and yellow-green. Analogous colors are a group of 3 colors that are all right next to each other on the color wheel. Using analogous colors can feel very overwhelming to the eye, so the recommendation is to use one of those colors as the main color, as the one you put on your palette the most, and then use the other 2 colors as more supporting roles and have a little less of that hue on your canvas or page. I personally really love how this one turned out, but I'm also just a huge fan of that yellow-green color. So let's try one more. These are triadic colors. Today I'll use my red-violet, green-blue, and orange-yellow. Triadic colors are the 3 colors evenly spaced around the color wheel. This creates another very high contrast color scheme, creating bold effects. So hopefully out of those 3 options, you can start experimenting with different color combinations. And of course, you don't have to follow those rules. It's just a fun way to start learning which colors look good together. After all, in art and creativity, all rules are meant to be broken. And I hope you feel so much more confident with mixing and choosing your next paint palette. This was so much fun to create with you, and if you're not done working in your sketchbook, why don't you join me for another video where we're creating a really beautiful piece together. I'll see you there, and happy painting!